It's a little known common courtesy out in the mountains during a snowstorm that if someone's seeking shelter in your cabin, you let them in. No, I wasn't the one offering that courtesy to someone else in the story. I was the one seeking refuge. It was supposed to be a long weekend of hunting, but what started as a cold sunny day quickly formed tons of dark storm clouds, and I quickly found myself right in the middle of a blizzard. After a full, rather unsuccessful day of hunting hares, I was way too far and disorientated to make my way back to the cabin. I had to seek refuge somewhere else. I came across a log cabin nestled in between a circle of trees. No lights on, but I still had to try the door. I hit the door with my fist a few times. No answer, but I could hear footsteps on the other side approaching the door. I expected it to open, but it didn't. I shouted that I am lost and that I need shelter. The door cracked open, and I heard a voice say, "Come in, leave your boots by the door." I waited a bit, expecting him to open the door fully and formally greet me as anyone would. But that didn't happen, so I pushed the door open myself and entered the dark cabin. The room was lit by 2 candles, just enough for me to see the couch that the man had told me to sleep on. As for the man, all he saw was his silhouette on the far side of the room. The little light from the candles didn't extend that far. I dropped my bag and gun on the floor and lay down on the couch. I thanked the man for letting me crash here till the storm blows over. He didn't answer. His behaviour wasn't the most bizarre thing. Folks are strange up in the mountains. If he wasn't up for conversation, I'd just get some early shut-eye. I closed my eyes, though the level of darkness with my eyes closed wasn't much of a difference. I was subconsciously waiting to hear the man's footsteps leave the room, but they never did. I opened my eyes, and his silhouette was still in the corner of the room, just standing there. I felt the need to say, "Yeah, I think I'm just going to get some sleep now, thanks." No response. I turned to my other side so that I wouldn't be tempted just to keep opening my eyes to check on him. Some time passed, but now having heard his footsteps walk away, the curiosity was eating away at me. I turned over to look again, and this time I swear to God the silhouette of the man was closer by at least a few feet. I couldn't make out his face, but the slight glow from the candles would just barely trickle around the man's forehead, and what I saw was disgustingly pale skin. I quickly gathered my belongings and thanked him, but I said I had to go. I didn't look at him anymore because I don't think I wanted to know what he looked like. I put my boots on outside and hurried back into the blizzard. I came across another cabin down the hill, the one with the lights on. I knocked on the door and some old man and his wife answered the door. They welcomed me in immediately and were very inviting. They gave me some hot tea and offered me a spot on the couch. I told them the story about the freaky cabin up the hill, and the two looked at each other puzzled. The woman confirmed 2 times the cabin I was talking about, and she said, "Honey, the owner of that cabin was murdered 2 years ago. That cabin has been vacant ever since." There was this one time I was out late drinking with my friends. It was some point in the summer of 2016. We were kind of just walking around town and then around the neighbourhood when one of my friends spotted something hiding in the bush. He pointed and said, "Look," and we all walked a little closer to get a better look. We could see what he was talking about, but just barely. It was bizarre, like someone hiding in this bush in front of this house. When we got too close, apparently, this weird off-putting sound started coming from the bush. So we all screamed and left and ran away. We screamed because it was scary, but laughed at the same time, because it was bizarrely funny, and there was a lot of us, so... Anyway, we walked back to our house, respectively assuming whoever was in that bush was just messing with people. I fell asleep pretty easily that night, since I was drunk. But the next thing I remember was waking up in the near pitch blackness of the room. I couldn't look at the clock to see what time it was, because I literally couldn't move. I was in a sleep paralysis state. I looked around the room with my eyes only. I started to hear a familiar noise. The noise was coming from that bush. And I looked straight in front of me, at the foot of my bed, and what I saw was pure nightmare fuel. It was what appeared to be this floating, grotesque, horrific head of a demonic ghost-like thing. As it got closer to me, I realised it wasn't floating. There was a body, but the body blended in with the blackness of the room. Its mouth hung open, and it just kept making the familiar noise from the bush. It got mere inches from my face before it suddenly faded away, and I was able to let out a scream and move my body. I sat up in my bed, panting, heart racing. I flicked on the lamp and checked around the bed. But that demonic thing was gone. What I just experienced seemed so real, like I was awake for it. It wasn't a dream. I told my parents about it the next day, and they agreed with me that it was sleep paralysis, though they never had heard of someone seeing freaky shit like this before. I'm a 30-year-old woman living alone in a mid to lower income area. There's some crime in my town, but I don't live in the ghetto still. Sometimes I do feel a little uncomfortable. I don't know a lot of my neighbours too. Well, other than my next door neighbours, who are both nice. The houses across the street are a different story. I like knowing my neighbours because it makes me feel a little safer living alone. I'm a big scaredy cat, so my biggest fears of living alone came true when one night I was in bed trying to fall asleep. It was pretty late on a work night, past 11. I heard the leaves slightly crunching on the side of the house. Human or not, I couldn't tell. There are a lot of cats and raccoons around this area at night. The following night I was awoken to something outside my window, like a singular crack or tap. It must have been the window frame. It was October, so I still had the windows open for air, so I guess out of pure instinct I said, "Who's there?" I didn't hear anything after that. I got up and lifted my blind and no one was outside. 2 nights in a row of this, I was starting to think I was getting paranoid over the smallest things like regular house noises. So I tried to fall back asleep, but that same night I woke up again, this time to some scratching and scraping sounds. From the backyard I heard it through the window. I got up from my bed and went out to the little living space by the back door. I heard the clicking louder. Now it was right outside the sliding door. I turned on the light in the living space and then the sound stopped. I went over to the sliding door, which was covered by a sliding curtain. I was so scared to pull it, expecting to see someone, but when I yanked it open like a band-aid, no one was there. I flicked on the backyard light and slid open the door. I was relieved to see no one out there, including raccoons or some other pests. I listened to the crickets for a minute, then heard something in my tiny yard, something rustling in the bush. I looked at the bushes. They're too thick to really see anything, but they're definitely a good place for someone to hide. And if that sound wasn't a raccoon or possum, I didn't want to know what it was. I went back inside and I made sure everything was locked. I went back to my room and even locked my bedroom door. After about 10 minutes of laying in my bed, there was a knock at my front door, and this time I was starting to freak out now. I ignored it and stayed in my bed. No one should be knocking this late at night. If it happened again, I'd call 911. It didn't happen again. I somehow fell asleep eventually. After that, the next day I went straight to Best Buy with my brother, and he helped me pick out a doorbell camera and a security camera set. He helped me install both of them, the doorbell camera in front and the other cameras in the back, both in low-key spots. My brother also spent the night that night to make me feel better. He slept in the guest bedroom. We were both in our own beds trying to sleep when I got an alert on my phone, motion detected on my property. I opened the Ring app and I screamed because there was something in the black and white video trying to pick the lock to the back door of my house. I woke up my brother and showed him the video, and he burst out of bed without shoes or socks and ran out into the backyard, ready to kill someone. But my scream chased the person away, which we saw while playing the video back. My brother screamed outside my yard to never come back as loud as he could, and undoubtedly the person trying to break in heard it. We couldn't identify the man's face. He had a hood over his head and was wearing all dark clothing. but not in a single frame could we see his face. He was also wearing gloves, which meant he left no fingerprints. We called the police, even knowing there wasn't much that they could do. It just felt like we needed to have them come, to keep a lookout. After that night, nothing similar ever happened again. Not to toot my own horn, but I am more on the attractive side. And what really scares me is the possibility that this was someone who knew who I am, a young single woman living alone in a house. It makes me wonder if it's possible that there was someone who lives on my street, one of my neighbours. I'll guess I never know.